Thanks. So I was just talking about engaged Buddhism and how Bhikkhu Bodhi published an article in 2007 that Buddhists really weren't very engaged, even though the Buddha did teach that engaged Buddhism was important. So here's a quote from Bhikkhu Bodhi's article in Lion's Roar in 2007. The special challenge facing Buddhism in our age is to stand up as an advocate for justice in the world, a voice of conscience for those victims of social, economic, and political injustice who cannot stand up and speak for themselves. He said this is a deeply moral watershed moment for modern Buddhism. He said he believed Buddhism must take this direction of greater engagement to share in the Buddha's mission of humanity. So what actually happened, because I've heard this story from Bhikkhu Bodhi, within weeks, Bhikkhu Bodhi had thousands of dollars on his desk that he hadn't even asked for. And so he found among the students and people that he knew some talented people, and he formed this organization called Buddhist Global Relief. They've been around 12 years now. So I guess he founded it in around 2010. He got it all going. And the first year they had one project, and the project had a $10,000 budget. In 2022, we had 50 projects and $1 million budget. It was the first time we went over $1 million. I'd love to just share the website with you so you know about it. I think you'll be uh, you'll enjoy knowing about it. So this is the website that I've helped build for many years, and it's just a beautiful website. That's Bhikkhu Bodhi. He's from Brooklyn, so he talks like this. And we have a mission of 4 primary goals. Hunger was the main goal, and then children's education, women's empowerment, and sustainable agriculture. Those are the 4 areas that Buddhist Global Relief works in. So you can see those project areas and visit all the different 50 projects in these different areas. I just wanted to show that to you. I think it's a wonderful organization, and I've loved working for them. When I fell and broke my hip in April, I resigned from that and a lot of other things because I really was overextended. But I have loved working for them. So that's Bhikkhu Bodhi, and that changed things for American Buddhism. But actually, the term engaged Buddhism goes back to the 1950s, and the phrase engaged Buddhism was coined by Thich Nhat Hanh in the context of the Vietnam War and the suffering that he saw then. He juxtaposed engaged Buddhism with a form of Buddhism that was monastic and not engaged. I'll read you a quote from his book, Peace in Every Step. When I was in Vietnam, so many of our villages were being bombed. Along with my monastic brothers and sisters, I had to decide what to do. Should we continue to practice in our monasteries, or should we leave the meditation halls in order to help people who were suffering under the bombs? After careful reflection, we decided to do both, to go out and help people, but to do so in mindfulness. We called it engaged Buddhism. Mindfulness must be engaged. Once there is seeing, there must be acting. We must be aware of the real problems of the world. Then, with mindfulness, we will know what to do and what not to do to be of help. One more quote, and a tiny one after. Joanna Macy, who is an esteemed Buddhist teacher and is a very well-known environmental activist. And this is from her book in 1991, when this engaged Buddhism now was kind of in our minds a little bit more. The vitality of Buddhism today is most clearly reflected in the way it's being brought to bear on our social, economic, political, and environmental issues. The gate of the Dharma does not close behind us to secure us in a cloistered existence, aloof from the turbulence and suffering of samsara, so much as it leads us out into a life of risk for the sake of all beings. As many Dharma brothers and sisters discovered today, the world is our cloister. And the last little quote from Aung San Suu Kyi in her book, Freedom from Fear. If you're feeling helpless, help someone.
Very cool.
So Buddhism has changed dramatically in the United States since 1950 with Thich Nhat Hanh and then Bhikkhu Bodhi's challenge, emphasizing engagement and working to relieve suffering. And actually the Buddha taught this. This is not new. The Buddha taught the precepts in a certain way that it implied social interaction. For example, he didn't say, "Thou shalt not kill." He said, "Let him not destroy life, nor cause others to destroy life, and also not to approve of others killing. Let him not cause to steal, not approve of others stealing." So the precepts were just not given as commands, but they were given as commands in a social context. The Buddha is recommending that we engage actions with other people and that we don't approve of actions that violate the precepts. That's pretty engaged. And then the very great quote, maybe one of the greatest quotes of all the Buddhist teachings: hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law. That sounds like engaged Buddhism to me. This is the basic insight that gave rise and underlies the movement of nonviolence from Gandhi, from Dr. Martin Luther King. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Bodhisattva of compassion. I have some pictures I want to show you. There she is. I always think of her as feminine, but I don't know if she really is. But I call Kuan Yin a her, also known as Avalokiteshvara. This is the Bodhisattva of compassion, and when the Bodhisattva of compassion is shown, let me show you a couple pictures of what she looks like. She's shown, you can see that? She's shown with 1,000 arms, and each one is capable of working to reduce suffering. And each hand has an eye, and the eye symbolizes her seeing the suffering and then reaching out for it with her hand. So that's the symbolism of that picture. Here's a couple others that I just thought were, this is the same idea here. You see these many armed Buddhas. That's Kuan Yin. That's the Bodhisattva of compassion with her 1,000 arms and the hands with the eyes. Isn't that beautiful? So now when you see those Buddhas with the many arms, you'll know why. So often, Buddhist practice is not applied to our families, not applied to our workplace, to our community. And we want to be really wary of developing a split personality where we're Buddhists on Thursday night and not on Friday morning. So we have to be really creative to bring our practice into these outer realms. Off the cushion, on the cushion. Those worlds need to match. I know that sometimes in meditation we have these beautiful transcendent experiences of beauty and love, and then we get out in the world and it's not so pure and simple. We need to work a little bit to actually love, and it isn't necessarily that gorgeous subjective experience. I think it's interesting to think about, when do we have responsibility? I've been thinking about this for a long time. I don't know if this is Buddhism, but this is Mary Helen. I think we're responsible um, when we see suffering. Just being nearby and seeing it, knowing about it, comes with some responsibility. I don't know if you agree with me, but I'd be willing. We can talk about that a little bit later.
Hey, Helen, could you repeat that? My sound went bad there.
Um, I was asking, when are we responsible? And my answer to that, this is Mary Helen's answer, not necessarily a Buddhist answer, is that when we're nearby, when we see suffering, as soon as we know about it, it comes with a certain responsibility, and we feel that. There may be different levels and ways of fulfilling that responsibility, but it's there. Buddhism emphasizes compassion. I think all major religions emphasize compassion. There's nothing so Buddhist about compassion. Compassion is about being a human being. We're compassionate because we're humans and we care. And we're sensitive to what the situation calls for. So we feel for other human beings because we're human beings, not because we're Buddhist. It's more universal. So, what should we choose to get involved in? There's so much suffering. How can we can't address all of it. So what's most important for us to focus on? I know I was showing you the Buddhist Global Relief website, and one of their focuses is world hunger. Sometimes when you get such a broad focus, it removes us from the here and now awareness that we want to maintain, that people are actually suffering. But we need to look at the big picture, but we need to look at the little picture. So we need to find the balance between actual human to human feeling and the big picture. So I think we might feel that Buddhism withdraws at this point when it comes to looking at the big picture. Buddhism, we might think, is going to say that's the way it is. It's always been that way. It will always be that way. There's nothing you can do about it. Go back to your cave and don't get involved. You can't change the world. But I don't think that may be true in traditional Buddhism, but I don't think it's true, or it's not adequate for modern Buddhism. This world has gotten too small. Traditional Buddhism, if we think about it, it reflects Asia and hundreds and all these many centuries of Asian society where there were kings and emperors. And it might have been necessary for a spiritual person to withdraw in that culture. But different today. In democracy, we have widely held respect for human rights, albeit very imperfect, as we all know and are feeling these days. But even though Buddhism arose and the Buddha's teachings were intended for people who are very different from us, living in a very different culture, the basic principles are the same. And we can find guidance. Even though today we have weapons of mass destruction, and global warming. And the actions of our leaders can affect the entire human race and the biosphere that we live in forever. So we can't just concentrate on our own liberation and ignore the responsibility to the world. We're part of this world. Our enlightenment is the world's enlightenment, and the world needs all the help it can get. Thich Nhat Hanh says, a religious community should take a clear stand against oppression and injustice, strive to change the situation without engaging in partisan conflicts. That's a very important little prepositional phrase there. So this is sort of interesting. The Buddha pointed out we all experience pain, we all get sick, we all lose people we love, we all die. We react with greed, hatred, and delusion that creates our suffering. Our practice is not to get rid of pain, but to transform our reactivity and experience the pain without the suffering, which is like another level. And take responsibility for everything in our lives and for the collective situation, for the suffering of our world. What is our relationship to basic human suffering? It's related to craving, to greed, to aversion, hatred, but it's especially related to the delusional sense of self. We think there is us, and then there's the world outside us. And this is a construction that we make up. It's a delusion with no reality. There isn't us and the world outside us. The us inside is basically insecure because it's in construction. The self wants to ground itself because it feels groundless, because it is groundless. So we devote our lives to seeking symbolic self, fame, fortune, power, things as representations of self, delusional. If we look closely, we can see that intractable social issues can be traced back to exactly this deluded sense of self. How come the TV just went on? I don't know. Can you hear it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go turn it off. My talk's almost over and we can have a discussion. Give me a sec. Because there's nobody here but me. I don't know what it was. The TV's not on. Maybe Google was having a discussion with itself. So isn't that pretty interesting? These intractable social issues can be traced back more than greed, more than aversion, to delusion, to that delusional sense of self, a collective sense of self. My race, my class, my gender, my nation, my religion. Because the rest of those sentences is better than yours. And that's where the problems come in. My group is better than your group, the competition. And just like the self, then the group can never be secure. And a lot of institutions, religious, political, otherwise, reinforce this. Buddhism teaches that it's not very important to identify yourself as a Buddhist. Applying that label to yourself doesn't get you anything. What matters is your practice and how you embody the principles. So just coming back to the bodhisattvas to conclude, The Bodhisattva does not vow to save all Buddhists. She vows to save all sentient beings. And I'll just read you a line or two from the Bodhisattva vow to close. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. So I just love to open this up to discussion, whatever you're thinking of, whatever this made you, where you went with it, and your thoughts.
I don't think that Buddhism necessarily says don't engage in worldly. It depends on how you engage. It depends on the way you engage. If you engage with hostility, or you engage with hatred, or you engage and what you do is causing more harm, I think those are all Buddhist principles that you need to look at, you know. And to go into seclusion is to look at your intentions and to be able to engage in a way that is not harmful. That so I don't think that Buddhism necessarily means that you shouldn't engage. It just means be aware of how you're engaging. That's my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Agreed. Jim, were you going to say something? You're muted.
Yeah, I was going to say that it comes back to how clear Thich Nhat Hanh is in many of his books and expressions and everything I've ever read of his. And you're using him as an example, as well as others tonight. Reminds me to ask you, were you actually referencing a particular book of his tonight as opposed to just in general? In other words, is there a particular Thich Nhat Hanh book you might reference to us?
Yeah, I think I have a title here. Yeah. The book I was quoting from is called Peace in Every Step. And I think it's in that book that he coins the term engaged Buddhism.
Hmm.
When I read you about when he was in Vietnam and his villages were being bombed and the monks and nuns were trying to decide whether to stay in or go out and decided to do both. Remember that quote? That's from Peace in Every Step, the name of the book, from 1991. But it comes from 1950 and his experience in the Vietnam War. So that's where engaged, and they called it engaged Buddhism in 1950, but he's writing about it here in 1991.
Yeah, you're referencing the vow of the Bodhisattva. You know, the Mahayana tradition, Tibetan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, has a very strong community emphasis. The whole ideal of the Bodhisattva is not to accept, the ending of the cycle of birth and death until all human beings or all sentient beings can join you. And there's this one quote, my body thus and all my goods besides, and all my merits gained and to be gained, I strive to give them all away and withholding nothing. And anyway, so it's, I think in the Theravadan tradition, it's not as obvious, but in the Mahayana, a number of the Mahayana traditions, it's very strong. And the Buddhist Peace Fellowship began in the 1970s and was founded largely by Zen practitioners. Yeah, I mean, that was all about engaged Buddhism. And Bernie Glassman, who was a Zen Roshi in New York, had a group that went out and lived on the street, to experience what homelessness was like so they could be better advocates for the homeless. Anyway, so there's a long tradition that goes back, before the 2007s or whatever.
Well, even the Theravadan monks in Myanmar did protest marches and against the junta, and so that's engaged Buddhism, and they were monks, engaged in protesting.
Mhm.
The Dalai Lama doesn't protest per se, but he's definitely engaged. And he's Tibetan Buddhism, so it's all over in Buddhism. It's not just, it just depends on how you do it. Like he talks about the Dalai Lama talks about the Chinese, and he said, my enemy, my friends, so he recognizes that they are human beings, and I think sometimes we differentiate, we forget the interconnectedness of all human beings, and it's us and others, or us and them, so like I say, it really depends when you engage on your attitude. That's
When Thich Nhat Hanh, talked about, not being partisan. I mean, it doesn't necessarily apply to our situation, but during the Vietnam War, he was equally hated by the communists and the Americans and the South Vietnamese government at that time. Anyway, so they were protesting the war and were not identifying with either side, and often people in their movement were being killed by people on both sides. It's just amazing stance.
Hmm. It's
Yeah, there's
interesting.
also the peacekeepers that engage in supporting both sides of a conflict, and they have no weapons or anything, so you do literally take your life in your own hands by doing that, but very brave. I always thought they should have a coalition of leaders. Mandela, Desmond Tutu, the Dalai Lama, and other peacekeepers. A coalition of peacekeepers.
Just one more note about the Thich Nhat Hanh. It was young, very young people at that time. I think they were college age, and that movement. And so, yeah, I mean, the courage was for people much younger than us, and yeah, it's pretty inspiring.
Barry, I didn't know that. That's a really good point. Yeah. I didn't think of the time difference or the age difference that would have gone by in those years. Yeah. Hmm. what do you think about the point of the delusion of self, which then, kind of morphs into delusion of groups, my group, my religion, my this, my that, and the competition, or just the delusion of self being a major, because, we understand greed, we understand hatred, but I don't always understand delusion as clearly. And it is usually tied to the sense of self and the idea of no self. And so just thinking of it that way, that this ego causes so much of our suffering, this delusion of the self, and the kind of competitive nature that comes up with it pretty quickly. And I really liked that idea a lot, although I need to think about it because I don't experience it as directly as when I'm greedy, I know I'm greedy. When I'm full of hate, I know I'm full of hate, but I don't always know when I'm delusional. And I guess that's part of the definition of delusional. So you don't
Yeah.
know you don't know you got it. So, but it's interesting to kind of look at that as having a major role.
I think the delusion of self can be a major factor in greed and hatred. Often we're trying to protect, our self-image or whatever, or our group, and so that's the source of our hatred, and to secure, resources or whatever for our separate self, it can be the source of greed. And anyway, so I don't, yeah, separating them may not be that that useful or whatever.
Good point.
I'm curious, did anybody here check in by any chance with the 6-part series on Zen Buddhism that's taking place on Wednesday nights through the UU Church? I referenced that a couple weeks ago. And in that context, I found that it's kind of bizarre. There are enough significant differences in certain aspects of Zen and what we practice that it gets me more confused than simplified. And I was, but it's getting, I was on Zoom this last Wednesday. I didn't go in person, but there have been 2 sessions out of 6. And I would still, you don't have to have anything to do with the UU Church. You could go to their website, as I said, and find it, and then go on Zoom if you wanted to, or you could go into the church in person, which about 20 people did last Wednesday.
They've got a lot of programs, and Maeve is talking to them about possibly meeting there. She hasn't been able to follow through on that yet, but she's got a lot going on. So
I know.
But we are looking for the in-person venue. Maybe there at the UU's, maybe down in the canyon. But maybe starting, I think the suggestion was we meet in person once a month to start.
Good.
And
Okay.
maybe we have a Zoom option at the same time, just makes
I believe I can say that Reverend Alex would be still amenable to that. And if you haven't talked to him, obviously do so. He's easy to talk to. In fact, I recommend. I don't know.
It's
He is
Maeve's
a
job, so I can't get into that.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, she's on it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Good. Oh. It's funny, I'm really liking these small little groups that we've been getting of 5, 7 people. It's very nice to have everyone have a chance to talk. And
you can actually have a little bit of a dialogue.
right. Right. Plus, our pictures are so much bigger.
Right. So long as I can stay on the screen.
Well, why don't we do a little metta and close? It's almost 25 after. So unless anybody has any other comments or questions or thoughts about the subject of engaged Buddhism.
I'm going to say goodnight. My dog,
You cut what your dog what?
my dog is bothering me to go
Oh,
out.
well, give Tess my love.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Good
Night.
night.
Right.
So we can just do a little short metta together and kind of maybe coming back into meditative posture and bringing attention to the area of the heart, breathing into the heart, and letting that feeling of kindness, gentleness, which definitely lives in the heart and not the brain. I mean, I'm 100% sure of that. It's right there under my hands in my heart. You know, this feeling of kindness for myself, for all of you, and wishing you well. And just this gentle, this beautiful capacity we have for kindness, for friendliness, for compassion, for joy, for equanimity. You know, that's what makes us human beings. I don't know if other species have it too. I think maybe they do. Maybe rudimentary, but who knows? And just feeling that, you know, connection with each other, that we've all got that feeling in our heart, and that it connects us, that we're all connected. And that is that's the underlying principle behind engaged Buddhism, that everything we do affects all of us. So just sending that kindness to ourselves, sending it to one another, sending it to all of our friends and family, to our neighborhood, to the people we saw wherever we went today, whether we knew them or not. Just sending kindness to everyone that we came in contact with during this whole day. The pharmacist, the physician's assistant, the guy at the gas station where you bought a soda, the people at the meeting you went to, the people you live with. Sending this kindness and gentleness to everyone in your life. And wishing, sending it out in a bigger and bigger geographic, letting it just expand, letting it fill your heart, letting it fill your body, letting it fill your house, your neighborhood, your town, your state, your country, your continent, your oceans, your whole planet, and all beings, billions of beings that we can hold in our heart right now and send these good wishes to them, and all beings may be beyond this planet, whatever beings there may be, whatever universes there may be, wishing may all beings everywhere awaken and be free.
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Helen.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Good seeing everybody.
Good
Yes,
seeing you all.
Yeah, to see you.
Yeah, take care. Have a good week. Be a
yes.
Buddhist on Friday morning. Don't forget.
But we have the weekend off, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mary Helen.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Barbara. It's so nice to see you lately. I just love it. Okay, everybody, I'm going to end this meeting. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. See you soon. Love to Jody.
Thank you.